Hey there, everybody, and welcome back to the Growing Band Director podcast. My name is Kyle Smith, and joining me is my friend and colleague, Jeff Smith. Our mission is to share practical advice and explore topics that will help every band director, no matter your experience level, as well as music education students who are working to join us in the coming years. Together, we will discuss many aspects of a well-rounded band program, but most importantly, we will discuss concepts that help us all improve our own programs each and every day. Always remember the famous quote by Ray Kroc, "When you're green, you're growing, and when you're right, you rot." Let's get started. Welcome back, everybody, to the Growing Band Director podcast. I'm here with Tom LaPointe, good friend of mine and percussion teacher and writer extraordinaire, and my good friend Jeff Smith. We're going to be doing episode 69 today, Marching Percussion for Band Directors. And Tom is going to be our expert guest on here. But before we get to that, just a couple of things we wanted to do first. First of all, thank you to the couple, as Jeff leaves, a couple of the recent Patreon supporters who have jumped on the Patreon platform, Matt and Mike and Kira. I appreciate it very much. Anybody who wants to support the show, just jump on Growing Band and you'll find a way to do that for as little as $3 a month. It helps us keep things coming to you. And some of them reached out recently about why they're supporting the show. And it's basically because they are allowed to then, connect with other band directors while they're driving in to work each morning and leaving the after school. And, I was talking with another band director who found the podcast helpful because they only see themselves when it comes to music teachers. And it's every day over and over and over again, the same thing. And having sort of a little community on the podcast to listen to different ideas and all that. Jeff, this band director, was telling me that your tip from episode 1, which was called Teaching the Jazz Band, and this guy is a great jazz teacher. He said, Jeff mentioned about having 2 bass amps behind the band, one on either side, to help my band hear the bass. And he said, that was a great idea. I never thought of that. And I'm going to do it. So we offer lots of practical advice for us all to improve our programs every day. Good. We have over 800 people in the Facebook group at this point. Anybody who is not on there should join and check us out. Growing Band Director Podcast Community on Facebook. So we're going to start with a couple mailbag questions. I reached out and asked people sort of what are some things they're thinking of professionally right now, and how can we either help or answer or discuss. So we're going to start with that right now. First, from Emily. How do I balance my social life with my professional life? So all 3 of us have some thoughts on this. I'm going to go first. My first question to you is, do you want to be a great band director? Not that you need to just live band to be a great band director, but when you're young and you have just starting to teach, I think you really need to immerse yourself in the art of that is being a band director. And at some point, as you get married and start having kids, you then need to start thinking about how your schedule affects everybody else around you. Tom and Jeff, you guys know that very well. But I think I would caution young teachers or music education students to be worrying not about their social life too much and thinking more about becoming a really good teacher. And then it's important to find the balance along the way as you do it. But there's a lot of teachers who come in and they're going to go from 7 to 2:30 or whatever, and that's the extent of it, and that's okay. It's just important to be willing to work really hard, I guess would be my big message on that. Tom, can you tell us your brief story about finding balance professionally?
Yeah, well, and like you had mentioned, to start, it was, I spent a lot of time doing the drumline thing, and I could invest a lot of time into that because I was really trying to set up what I wanted out of the students and what I wanted for a total, the final outcome. And I think the more you do it, you will, it will kind of, piggyback off the year before. Like the students will know what to expect from you, and they get to do that. And then you have your new students every year, and you get to build them up as well. So I feel like the more you're into it, the less you actually have to put into it, and the more you can kind of get out and have a personal life, you know.
Yeah.
And then, you know, once I got married and had started having kids, it definitely got a lot harder to do both, which I had a lot of, you know, some staff, percussion staff that I relied on that really helped me out, you know, running things when I couldn't be there. But yeah, once kids get in the picture, it's a little tricky.
You definitely got to have your priorities in order. And to me, a lot of times as a young teacher, you're not going to be out with a social life a lot because come 4:30 on Friday, you're exhausted and you're laying on the couch because you're so tired. So, Jeff, you definitely come at this from a different angle.
Yes, I do. So I'll start by saying that I started teaching in 1975, and I have not had a year off yet since 1975. I'm now 70 years old. I think Emily needs to decide on two things. Do you want a job or do you want a career? If you want a job, well, then you can go in from 7 to 2:30, but understand that if your numbers in your group starts dwindling and people don't sign up for your course, you don't have a career anymore because soon you'll be finding a new job once again. Yeah. And I think that's the biggest problem in the band director world is jobs versus careers. Me, 5 days before I started teaching, I got married. A year and a half later, I had my first son, and now my children are in their 40s, and they have children, and their kids are invested in their programs. My wife is a elementary school teacher, and as she will point out to me all the time, you don't bring as much paperwork home, but those elementary school teachers who come home, those middle school teachers who come home, those high school teachers that come home after a day at work, they may be there from 7 to 2:30, but they have 3 to 4 hours of paperwork every night. And that's the difference between us and them, because we're teaching an oral skill. So we may get out of school at 2:30, and then for me, on a Monday and Wednesday from 3 to 5 was Jazz Band 1. On Tuesdays and Thursdays from 3 to 5 was Jazz Band 2. On Mondays and Wednesdays from 6 to 8 was Jazz Band 3. Then there was pit orchestra. Then there was winter percussion. And then we did musical theater. And then in the fall, we did marching band. And marching band for us was Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Friday night from 6 until 9. And Saturdays starting at 8 o'clock in the morning until we got home from a competition. And that was my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
And my children and my wife were part of it. My wife would make between 400 and 500 flags a year for my marching band while teaching. And my children had been in the program since they were 10 years old, where they'd be ninjas carrying equipment around on the field, helping out on the field and coming with daddy to rehearsals and stuff like that. And we lived 45 minutes away from where I taught. So I think the teacher of today has to make a decision. Do you want a job or do you want a career? And in having a career, you develop a program. And then there's longevity to the program, which then again brings longevity to your career. And I think that's what we miss.
I definitely think there is a way to have a good work-life balance these days and be a good band director. I think there is, and everybody's balance is probably a little bit different. I would just caution people who haven't even started in the career to worry about doing too much already. I would say, no, immerse yourself and learn all the things you can. And as you go, feel free to back off a little bit. Okay, on to question 2. This one was from Andy. Andy was asking about tips on teaching improvisation. And I just wanted to let you know, we have had a number of episodes on teaching, especially beginning improvisation. If you're looking for more advanced concepts, I will point you to the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson podcast with Nick Manila. He does a great job. And it's a free podcast like all of them. And he's amazing, especially for teaching younger students. I'm going to list off some episodes we've done here with some really master teachers. Episode 18 was called Overcome the Fear and Embrace the Fun with Barry Saunders. Episode 29, Mike Sakash talked about learning a new tune, and he had a room full of middle and high school students, and he taught them how to learn a tune. He used Summertime. And then in episode 33, I had Nick Manila on, and we talked about like what to play over blues and what language to play and who to listen to and all these. We just dove right into it. And then episodes 50 and 51 were with our good friend John Mastriani, and he again, we talked about a lot of basic, how do you get kids to improvise from the very beginning? So for anybody looking for more jazz improvisation stuff right now, I would urge you to put that on rewind, go back and listen to those episodes, and let me know how they helped you. And our last question comes from Deontay. And Tom, I'm going to have you start on this one if you don't mind, because you have experience with this. It sounded like he was newer to a program, and his basic question was, I need help in dealing with underdeveloped musicians. So Tom, when you come into a program brand new and your kids don't have as many skills as you think they should have, what's some advice you might have?
So like me going into a new program?
Yeah, like you're new and maybe the kids are newer to drumline and you don't have a lot of kids with experience.
Right. So I would always show up with, this is what I want for my warm-up packets. And I kind of, I want everyone to be able to play the same, 4 basic warm-up books or warm-up exercises. And I would see who has the stronger hands, and I would actually try to link kids up. Be like, hey, you want to help out, work with this student a little bit on 8 on hand when you have some free time. If you guys have a study hall together or you're just hanging out after school, like work on this exercise for a little bit, take 20 minutes, whatever. So I really did rely on the stronger kids to help out develop the underdeveloped kids. And it seemed to work out for us. So, and then there are some other times too when I had enough staff members there that we could really break it down to subsectionals. So as far as like a marching battery is concerned, we had snares, tenors, and bass. And if I had the staff members there, I would take the snare drums, someone take the bass drums, and then someone take the tenors, and we would subsectional for the whole rehearsal.
Yeah. I can speak to it on a band director front because, the program I'm in now, my wife and I came and there was a lot of numbers and a very storied program, but the level was not very high. And I've been through it. We would identify where they were at, and then we would say, okay, they need to work on reading eighth notes. So we would do a couple lesson packets, and we would do that in 6th grade and 7th grade and 8th grade and 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade. And then when they could do that, we'd go to the next one. Okay. And we do basically treat every grade the same because we had to meet the kids where they're at. If a kid is low in skills because of maybe a program that they're a part of, I wouldn't call that their fault. They're just doing what they're taught. And if you're coming in somewhere with higher expectations than the person before you, I think you need to realize it's really going to take, 3 or 4 years till you feel like it's your program. And you need to be patient with meeting the kids where they're at and then, really moving through things and making them sound great and getting them to trust you. Because remember, as a leader, if you bring a benefit to somebody's life, they will follow you. So, I always started with an honest and respectful conversation with the middle school staff to create this blueprint of like, how do we get this program better without trying to make your people you work with feel bad, right? You're trying to just come up with solutions. And then the patience in fixing 4 years, for me, I looked for progress. Like, I want to make them sound great on this music right now. And next year, we're going to progress just a little bit and improve. I feel like it has to take time. So if you come into a program and you basically say, you're all terrible, we need to be better, like that's not going to help you very much. So those are my thoughts. Jeff?
I inherited 2 high school programs where the reading skills were a little challenging. And I tried to figure out why the problem was existing and what caused it and why we're having these problems. And it came down for me that the children didn't understand rhythm. Mm-hmm. So I brought the middle school band directors together and we discussed it. And we decided, well, if we're going to make this work, we all have to have a unified method of counting. And I think, some of my kids would come in like for an 1/8 and 2/16 strawberry, and then pumpernickel. And I said to them, the Tutti Frutti system does not work. We need to have a logical system. So we went to the numerical syllabic, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and etc. And we started from base 0 and taught the kids to count and made it fun for them to count. Now, range is always a limiting thing based on what notes they're taught, and we had to discover what notes they did know, what they didn't know, and we picked a repertoire that was appropriate to that. And then you got the kids that are really good that feel like they're being drawn down. So you have to make the kids that are in the lower learning process to feel wanted and needed. And it's a transition that you have to make. And by teaching everybody a centralized system of counting, you find that everybody starts blossoming together and the forward motion increases rapidly. And then you can add the other layers of scales, key signatures, all that stuff. But basic thing, if you can't read a rhythm, you can't play a rhythm.
Mhm.
And that's what you got to teach them. And that's where, no matter what system you use, I wasn't taught the numeric syllabic system. I was taught a whole different system. But there's so many people that, because a kid doesn't get it, says, well, I'll try this with them, I'll try that with them. Find a system and then continually teach it gradually and systematically. And don't be rushed because, oh, I got to have this concert ready. And you go one strawberry, pineapple, fruit. Well, that's not taught a kid a single thing that they can carry on for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
And I think, to me, the thing is, find out where they are, find a systematic rhythm system that everybody in the district will agree to, teach that religiously, and then you'll see all the things start to blossom slowly for you.
And especially if you've taken over a program that maybe there's been a bunch of different directors in one area, we've all kind of seen that. First of all, they have to buy into you and realize that you're there for the long haul, that you're genuine, and that you're going to help them improve. And remember, it's not about you, it's about them. So yeah, you might wave your baton and they're going to sound good or they're going to sound bad, but it's about how you can help them improve. So
could I add one thing?
Yeah, do it.
I think the other thing is that when you're in a scenario like that, communication to the parents about what you're doing and why you're doing it is paramount. Because if they understand, hey, things don't sound as good, parents will understand that. And this is the method we're going to try to fix it. And please bear with us for a while. There's going to be some clinks and clanks along the way. But once we all get on the same train, we're going to start rolling.
My trick has always been to just play a little bit easier music. So we start, It's like, okay, I need to find music that they can sound good on. I actually had the opposite, Jeff. We'd have our first couple concerts and the parents were amazed. They're like, our kids have never sounded like this. And there's your buy-in right there. The minute you get them start really sounding good, things are happening. So hopefully that helped. We're going to continue to take questions and hopefully do this more often. But on to all the marching stuff. Thank you, Tom, for being here. And man, old habits die hard. But I will say, this was supposed to be in person. I had the whole setup ready, all the table and all the microphones. And then this morning, in Tom's house, there's been some stomach bug. Don't. So
yeah,
we're all like, yeah, why don't you stay home? So
yeah.
It's awesome to have you. So Tom, you've been teaching about 20 years now, right?
Yeah,
and,
something like that. Yeah.
You're now judging in local circuits as well, and you've kind of seen it all. I'm going to speak a little bit about you just from my perspective. We've been good friends for a long time, and I've given you lots of kids who some could play and some could not play, and some were saxophone players and some were drummers, and
a lot of saxophone players.
What always seemed to work was that I think we had a good mutual understanding that I was going to do my best to give you the best kids for the position, and then you were going to do your best to understanding we're not in a perfect school situation to take what you have and then maximize it. And I've always felt like for you, if I just give you what I feel like are the right kids and I walk away for 3 months and I come back, they're always going to sound great. And part of that's the writing and part of that's the teaching and how much you care and all that. So can you tell us just a little bit about your background in the percussion realm?
Yeah. So I went to Bedford High School in Bedford, Maine, and I was in the marching band from 7th grade till I graduated. And then I marched a couple of years of drum corps with East Coast Jazz. And then pretty much the summer that I came home from my second year of drum corps, I started teaching at Bedford, and kind of like an apprenticeship, if you will, kind of getting set up to take it over. And then I taught at Bedford for a little while, and then I went to another a couple other schools. Ultimately ended up landing at Westbrook High School, where I think I taught for 12 years there, something like that, 10 to 12 years.
And you landed there because of our relationship, right? The relationship you had built previously, that's what sort of made that work.
Well, yeah, because I taught under you at Bedford for 2 or 3 seasons, I think. And then you ended up moving on to Westbrook. and then a little time had passed. I'd gone to another school, and then back to Biddeford, and then ultimately at Westbrook. So
Yeah. So just to start, this is a little bit off topic. I mean, not off topic, but not on our list here.
Right.
What kind of jumps to your mind when you think about people who are really good teachers? Like, what the teachers in the drumline idiom? What are some things that pop into your mind right away?
um, oh, that's kind of a tough one. So I don't know. I always think of the percussion instructor I dealt with when I was in high school, Andrew Carpenter. Um, he the way he taught us, he really had us believing that we could accomplish anything, and we could be the best that we could be, no matter what the show was, what the writing was. Um, we were gonna play that show at a very high level, and he had us believing that from day one, and we worked hard for it. We worked really hard for it, and he pushed us hard. Um, and there are days where I remember being in high school. I'm like, oh, I'm tired. I don't want to do this today. But we'd get through it, and he'd keep pushing us, and we would end up being great. Um, so I always think of like Andy Carpenter when it comes to that great teacher, because he had a standard, and he would push us for that. And like I said, we'd end up usually taking best percussion. Back when the main circuit was a competitive circuit, we took best percussion all the time.
Those
But
are
then we
some great drum lines.
Yeah, I mean,
So
there's
good.
there's people that still talk about those drum lines.
Yes.
I was
Yes.
talking to Charlie Poole, and he will talk about those, mid to late '90s Biddeford drum lines.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, and he pushed you guys beyond what you thought you could do, guys and girls,
Yeah.
and you followed him because you saw that there was an end in sight, and he brought something positive to your life.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to start with kind of from the very beginning. Let's talk about configuration of the battery. You're given a certain number of kids. Let's talk about like number of kids starting from small. So say like you're thrown 6 kids, and you're like, this is going to be your drum line. Is that kind of what you'd consider to be your minimum?
I think 5 would probably
Okay.
be the bare minimum.
So what do you do
And
with 5 kids?
I would have a snare drummer, a tenor drummer, and 3 bass drummers.
Yep.
I feel like the baseline, I feel like the minimum would be 3.
Yeah.
That would you can do more with some more with the writing. You can get a little bit more melodical with the music.
Melodical. Melodic.
Melodic.
Melodical. We're making up words.
Well, I'm a drummer, so
Yeah.
you can get melodic a little bit with 3 bass drummers. 2 I think is really tricky. I have put out drum lines that were 1 snare, 1 tenor, and 2 bass. And it was, the bass drums played a lot of notes, but they were basically mirroring what, the other kids were playing. And there wasn't, there just wasn't a lot there. So I probably would have been better off having a stationary drum line and having, 4 or 5 bass drums instead of just the 2. So I shot for 3 bass drums, and then a snare and a tenor.
So if you add a kid to that, I assume that means 2 snare drums, one tenor, and 3 bass.
And I would go 2 snare drums, 1 tenor, and 3 bass.
Okay, so you have 7 kids.
So
because the option is, do you do a tenor player or do you do a 4th bass drummer?
I'd probably do a 4th bass drummer. Because it just, again, you can add more to that show with 4 bass drums rather than 2 snares and 2 tenors.
Okay, so then you get to 8 kids. Are you adding another tenor player?
At that point, I would add another tenor player.
Yeah.
So,
there are probably circumstances where you might take 3 snares, like if it's the right combination of kids.
Yeah, if they there were 3 students. My last, within my last couple of years at Westbrook, that I mean, when they were at the snare line together, they were really good together.
Yeah.
And they were clean. So I would go, with them, I would go 3-1.
Yeah.
But ideally, I would go 2 snares, 2 tenors.
So
and then 4 bass.
assuming we don't have like 25 kids in the line, what is your ideal setup?
I always wanted 3 snares, 2 tenors, and 5 bass. I feel like that was challenging enough. Because cleaning 3 snares is tricky, cleaning 2 tenors is tricky. And then, getting 5 bass drums to learn the split part.
Yep.
There's a lot of work there to be done. But that was always my dream line for this circuit anyway.
And in some areas of the country, they've got way more kids. So they're dealing with 8 kids in the snare line and 6 tenor players. And, around here, if we have a couple more kids, we usually put them on the flub drum. If people don't know the flub, it's, I don't know, it's newer to me. I don't know if it's been around forever, but it's basically one tom, and that's like your kind of learning part where it plays the accent parts.
Yeah. So I always viewed the flub drum as pretty much a growth tool. We'll put these kids on flub that, we think could transition to snare drum or tenor drum at some point. So
they're pretty
cheap.
Them. They're like $700.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're not that bad.
Yeah. There are ways you can find out where you can make your own. If you had a harness and just, a tenor drum from, the bottom tenor drum on the quads, you can make your own.
Mm-hmm.
We happened to luck out and just bought a couple flub drums or tenor drums. But yeah, I would use those as a tool to grow some kids to put on snare and maybe for that fall or maybe by next winter, we would put them on the snare drum.
It's really, I mean, they get, correct me if I'm wrong, but they get like the highlight points, they get the accent notes, they get the simpler stuff that if it's not there, it's not like it's a missing part. I mean, you're missing the timbre, but it's the simpler stuff, and it's easier than marching 4th bass.
So I have a question for you.
Yeah.
You have your drumline 5-2-4 cymbals.
I
gonna put them on the field or not?
I personally I would not. Mostly because I don't know enough about teaching a cymbal line, or even I've never even had to write for a cymbal line. So I just don't have that knowledge that I would feel comfortable putting them on the field. If I had a staff member that could teach that, I'd be more than welcome to have it.
I'm sure you're going to see, as you judge more, especially in winter percussion, that there'll be cymbal lines, but there's a separate instructor specific to the cymbal line to do the techniques that are required on a cymbal line.
Yeah, and I just that's just stuff that
it's an art form.
Yeah, and I've never done it, and I've never had to teach it, so I wouldn't feel comfortable doing it. But like I said, someone that if I had a staff member that knew how to do all that stuff, cool. You're the cymbal tech.
Well, there are a lot of, like in Connecticut and Massachusetts, they have indoor percussion groups and they'll have a cymbal line, but they go outside for the fall for marching band. Yeah, cymbal line disappears.
Right.
Because it's so much ground to take care of, and the technique is so specific.
Right. I would focus on filling drums before I would fill a cymbal line.
Yeah. So here's a big one for you: match grip versus traditional grip.
It does not matter to me. I would always go with match grip because we did not have the time to clean traditional. And at the end of the day, like, clean beats is what I want. And if we could do it traditional grip, cool, I'm all about it. But I did not want to invest the time into teaching that.
I agree 100%. Plus, by doing the match grip, you have a greater flexibility of transitioning kids through different instruments over the years. Where if you got to just bring them in for 1 year to learn traditional, well, that's a task in itself.
There's a moment that it hit me one day where I was just like, why are we still doing the traditional grip thing? Overall, and I get it, it looks cool and there's stick tricks and that's all fine and good, but I I don't know. It's a lot of time to spend into that technique that you can't really transfer anywhere else.
Well, and if you
I
think
mean, you
about
can
it,
you can do some like jazz drum set, I guess, and play traditional grip with it, but there's not many people that do that really.
yeah, you're right.
So it's just one of those, and I like seeing it. I think it's cool to watch a drum corps, and they're all playing traditional, and there's, like I said, the stick tricks and all the things. But I think for me, when I was as an instructor, I just wanted clean beats at the end of the day. So
And as we dig into this stuff more, I do want to point out there's a great website that Vic Firth puts out called Vic Firth Marching Percussion 101. And there's tons of resources for people on there that are free. So I would suggest you check that out. Okay, so Tom, whether they're a percussion teacher or a band director, let's start talking about gear. Do you have some stick selections that you like, you might suggest?
I've always been a big fan of the Tom Angst snare sticks, and I also use their indoor sticks for the snares and tenors.
Okay.
As I got older, I kind of just took whatever the snares are using for sticks. I usually have the tenors do the same thing. Sometimes I'd have them get tenor mallets. Especially if I had one tenor drum, I would have them do like tenor mallets. But if I had a pair of tenors, I'd usually just have them, probably just the Tom Angst sticks.
Yep.
I know they have like a Tom Angst tenor mallet too. It's like a stick with like a tenor mallet tip that we've used before. But that was usually my go-to. I also really like the Tom Hams for a long time, and I would buy a pair for myself still, and just play with them because I think they feel great. So,
Yeah.
but that would probably be my top two would be the Tom Angst and the Tom Hams.
What I would suggest people do what you did is that not that they have to have your answer, but if they find a stick they really like because they've played it and they have reasons for like it, they like the sound, they like how it plays, use that stick, right? Just pick something
Absolutely,
that works
yeah.
for you.
Yep. I've known people to use a lot of innovative percussion products, which and I've messed around with them a little bit. Not that I've ever owned a pair, but I've known some percussion guys that just happen to have them, and I mean they're great feel and stick, honestly. But I've always just been a Vic Firth person, and
Yeah.
like I said, those two are always my top two to go to.
Okay, so you've had some opportunities to purchase new drumline sets over your career, and in both cases, we bought black pearl.
Yep.
So I assume is pearl still sort of like your standard Cadillac if you can get it?
Yeah, I would think so. When I started teaching Westbrook, y'all had those really old Yamahas that were probably about my age.
I remember them. Yeah. Yeah.
And you know what? I mean, they were old, and they still got the job done. I don't think you necessarily have to go with the Pearl brand. I liked them. But again, I think it's all personal preference. Or maybe sometimes it's like, hey, we're gonna get a deal with Yamaha. Okay, use Yamahas. That's great too.
What are some other good brands that are out there for Jeff and Knocker? Yeah.
Well, I think the big two are probably Pearl and Yamaha. I know I used Dynasty when I marched East Coast my second year. I never had a problem with them. I really liked them. I thought the tenors were pretty light, which I liked. The first year I marched East Coast, we used Premiers, and those were probably the heaviest drums I ever carried in my life. Huh. It was painful.
Yeah.
So
there's also Majestics too.
Majestic.
Yep.
Is that a newer company
new
or an older
brand
company?
too?
Yeah. We have their concert bass drum, and it's really good.
I thought I heard a rumor that Tama was putting out a marching percussion set. So
it's always hard, like, if you can pay half the price and get something you haven't played before.
Right.
Because like it might be great, but then if you get it, it's not great.
Right.
That's always tough.
Well, also, don't you have to consider what the ply of the shell is? 9-ply maple versus 9-ply whatever, or 6-ply.
Yeah, and there are different grades of the Pearl drums. You can get they got the championship series. They have what was I can't remember what that top one is, like the championship carbon whatever. It was like carbon series. Yeah, so I mean there's definitely different like levels that you can get per whatever company you're going to go with. So
And then also, doesn't it have a lot of dependency upon what heads you use on the top and the bottom, and how much you're going to torque them up?
Well, I would imagine your standard free floating snare drum would be able to take whatever tension you're going to throw at it.
But I think that's an important thing that you just brought up, free floating, because I remember when I had my pearls when I was teaching initially, they started going to the 10 Dura head. So you had to work real hard to crank them up. So after 3/4 of a season, I crushed the entire shell because it pulled it in. And then the next year they came out with the free floaters, and that was the extension that kept the torque away from the shell and kept it in the bands and the tension rods.
Yep.
So new band directors, marching, free floaters.
Yes. Or you'll be using plastic Mylar heads.
Yeah.
Tom,
which can sound really good, but
what do you use for heads?
I what did I use towards the end? I was using the Remo Suede Max on the snare drums.
Yep.
We did the Evans heads one year, and I wasn't a fan, really. I mean, a lot of drum corps use them. A lot of high schools use them. And I feel like if you have a really big snare line, they're better. Okay. We usually had 2 or 3 snares. So I didn't really get the sound that I wanted with those particular Evans heads. We used the hybrid gray. So then I went to Suede Max on the snares, and I liked them better. We used the Fallum 2s on the snares for a while, but I kind of just had an issue with the heads would always pull. I'd put them on, and a week later the heads pulled. So we kind of just explored some other avenues, and I ended up landing on Suede Max. The tenors heads, I always go Remo pinstripes.
Yep.
Because I like the sound of that. I like the ring. I think had I done another indoor season, I think I probably would have changed it and did the suede heads on the tenors, just so it didn't have that much ring, because you're in a gym and it's not really it's not meant for drumming.
Yep.
And then bass heads, I usually just get whatever, just the Remo. I think they were called Power Max,
Power Stroke, Power Max,
or Power Stroke, something like that. Yeah. So
did you dampen your bass drum heads? And if you did, what method did you use?
I did. I always put tone foam on the outside, along the rim, like right on the head, along the inside of the rim.
Yep.
And so how did you? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that's one of those things that's what I've always known, so that's what I've always kind of stuck with. I know some people will put the foam on the inside because it looks cleaner, but you know what, for indoor percussion, I think having some extra foam on the inside is really helpful, because again, it kind of dampens them a little bit more, and you don't get that boomy, ringy bass sound in a gym.
So another controversial subject is the tuning of the top hair of the head of the snare drum versus the tuning of the bottom head. Yeah. How do you feel about that?
I usually left all my snare tuning to my techs because they were just better at it. But if I were, I don't know, if I were left with it, I never really overcranked the bottom head. I really just wanted enough tune on them to get the snares to resonate, and then the tops, I would crank them till I liked how it sounded.
That's right.
And then I would just match them up with wire.
Did you use gut or wire?
I'm sorry, we used guts.
Guts.
Yep.
And when you say that, you're talking about the snare on the bottom.
Yep.
It's made out of a different material. Cool. And then, so let's start talking about warm-up packets. I know a lot of years, the packet would change. Everybody always has kind of the standard couple warm-ups, and then depending on the level you have, you can always customize it to that. So there's lots of, I assume a lot of the warm-ups you used as your teacher came from the Vic Firth warm-up packet. So what are some basic warm-ups that, say you mentioned 4 earlier, say that you're in a program and you basically want to have them learn 4 warm-ups. What would you use?
So I would use 8 on hand exercise, an accent tap exercise, a double beat or a double beat, triple beat exercise, and just like a basic like diddle exercise. Either going from 8th to 16th notes or 16th to 32nd notes.
And it's always hard because you're trying to teach them a show while trying to teach them technique.
Right.
We deal with it in band too. It's like you're trying to learn concert music, but you always have your warm-up time to teach them technique. So it's really easy to do I bet you some drum lines have like 30, 40, 50 exercises that they do. It's just, you get to a point where you kind of have to pick what works for your kids.
Yep.
Are all 4 of those categories found in that Vic Firth packet?
Yeah. Yep. Yep. And actually I used the Vic Firth packet for like a couple years, 2 or 3 years, where I just printed that out and I handed out, said, we're going to learn these. And I know this was before we did the winter percussion program.
Mm-hmm.
We would always practice in the winter, regardless of what we were doing. So I would take all winter and we would do warm-ups, cadence, and we'd start learning show music, getting ready for the fall.
Yeah, and in there's not only battery stuff, but there's and including cymbals, but there's also front ensemble that goes along with it, right? So if people want to like this all-inclusive one package, that works really well.
Yep. So over time we got away from that, and I started writing warm-ups again, which were I had those 4 in there, and then if there was something that I wanted them to start playing in the show music, I would add it. Like we do like a paradiddle exercise. And like I never got around to it, which I kind of regret not doing it. I kind of wish we had incorporated some kind of flam exercise.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I ever really had them in the show, just because I didn't think it was really necessary. The way that we get judged, the judges in the stands are either in the stands or in the box. So I felt like for our shows, I didn't really need to have any flams anywhere.
Mm-hmm. So as we start thinking about like putting shows together, can we talk a little bit about drum music and sort of how it's written and things like that? You have always custom written your own music for your lines, and I will say you write a great book. And you always seem to know what level you're writing for, and the kids always they just sound great. And but there's also a lot of people who maybe don't have the luxury of a writer like you. I will plug, if anybody wants to get a new drumline writer, contact me on the show, and we'll put you in touch with Tom, and I'm sure he'd be happy to write for you. But a lot of people are using stock music, and you've always had the ability to not use that, but. So what is some advice, maybe the pros and cons of each one, and what you're looking for in some stock music if band directors are at a point where they need to use it?
I know there's a lot of great, like one of the big ones I think is Box 6. They do a lot of winter percussion shows. I would say if we were gonna buy a stock show, if we had a staff meeting for marching band, like, hey, we're gonna do a stock show. I would get it all together because that percussion book is written for that show. So it's already, as much as I would prefer to write my own. But I would, if you're gonna buy the set, I'd say buy the set because it's already written for it. Winter percussion is the same way. Winter percussion. There's a lot of great shows out there that you can purchase.
What do you look for in those drum books that are pre-written? Like, what are things that maybe would turn you off to it as personal preferences versus ones that you like?
Yeah, so I feel like the box shows they're pretty challenging, and if you're gonna purchase it, I mean, I don't want to spend the money on that and then have the kids not be able to play it,
Mhm.
because that's kind of disheartening. And or you're buying this show and you're like heavily watering it down to play, to be at your kid's level. And usually these companies will, they'll have different levels of that show that you can purchase. But I don't know, my experience, and we never purchased like a box six book before.
Mhm.
But I think we purchased one show the very start of Winter
I
Percussion.
remember it. We will not mention the show name or the company.
And I thought the music was good.
Mhm.
I just thought it was really overwritten,
Mhm.
and we struggled with it.
But I remember because it was that the year it was our first year like doing anything.
Yep.
And was that the year we didn't even memorize the music? Like we brought out music stands and
We
played
brought
it.
out music stands.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it was one of those we had to do something, and it was
Yep.
like I don't know, you and I were not the type of teachers to say, well, until we can do X, Y, and Z, we're not going to do anything. We
Right.
just said we're going to get out there the first year, and then guess what? In year two, they moved and they did no music, and you custom
Yes.
wrote a show for them again. So it was like
Yep.
this 2-year process to get where you wanted.
Yep.
Didn't we do a concert percussion before? Did we do like 1 year of concert percussion and then a year of marching percussion, but state situated, and then a year of without music? I don't remember if that was 3 years or 2 years.
I don't remember doing a concert
Okay.
percussion thing. So
But we went to shows and didn't march, and we basically said, "Hey, don't judge us
yeah,
on this." And just
we went to, I think we did like a couple shows, and it was, we got, participation plaque, and
Mhm.
like I said, they brought out music stands, and they wore, Westbrook sweatpants and Westbrook sweatshirts, and
Yeah.
we called it good.
But now,
So-
year after year, we're 30 to 40 kids who are in that program, and
Yeah.
between front and marching and all that, and it's grown to something that's been consistent over the last number of years, and that's where it started. We just said,
Yep.
"Hey, we want to do something," and I remember you always said, "I want to do it just because it's going to help feed the fall. Like it's just gonna. I don't want to." You got to a point where you're like, "I don't want to do warm ups for 7 months again. I want to have
Right.
them warm up and learn and perform something."
Well, so the funny story behind that, I remember we went to a NESBA show, and we were watching Dartmouth High School. I was like, I don't get it. I don't know how they do it. They're so good. They're so good.
Yep.
And I was talking to a buddy of mine, who was teaching at where was he teaching? I don't remember where he was teaching, but anyway, he was teaching one of the schools in Mass. And we went out after the show was done, and he was like, I'm like, man, I'd love to talk to Tom Ungst and just pick his brain a little bit, and see what he had, anything I can get from him,
Mhm.
So he's like, yeah, I'll give you his email address. Just email him, and then go from there. So I emailed Tom Ungst. I was like, hey, my name's Tom LaPointe. I teach Westbrook High School. I'd love to chat with you sometime about the success of your program, and what are some steps I can do to start growing my own program. And he emailed me back. He's like, here's my phone number. Give me a call. I was like, what? So I talked to Tom Ungst, and we were on the phone for like, 40 minutes to an hour. And he was, I told him that, what our typical, what our process is, that, we rehearse all winter to get better for the fall. We don't do any shows. We don't do winter percussion. And at one point, he's basically like, yeah, he's like, you got to give them a carrot. They need to do something significant in the winter if you want them to grow more in the fall. And so we started doing that, and you could see a difference. I thought the fall lines got a lot better. It took a little longer for them to learn the show music, because typically we would try to have most of it learned by way before band camp.
Mhm.
But they were they were able to, they were already playing better together at that point, because they just done a full winter season. And we would take maybe a month off, and then back into late spring, early summer rehearsals before band camp. So I
I
think
think one of the things our listeners need to know is that in some cases they don't have the ability to do winter percussion because they have no place to march at all,
Yep.
or they don't have a marching band, but they want to do winter percussion. You
Yep.
can do concert percussion
Yes.
competitively or non-competitively,
Yep.
and you can do standstill percussion, which is using the typical front ensemble and battery instruments, but not marching and being judged in those categories, whether it be in the NESBA circuit or in the MAC system. I don't know if Maine does that, but I know MAC and NESBA do it. And the thing you'll find is exactly what you've said, Tom, is that having done a winter of that carrot, they come back hungry to want to play even more as
Yes.
time goes on.
Mm-hmm.
And we're
I think
definitely,
I
we're
think-
definitely in a school that has issues like, we have to rehearse in the cafeteria half the time with the poles and, half the bass line is horn players or, all that. It's not like it's a perfect situation, but you're giving that opportunity.
the more I talk to other instructors, the more I realize that everyone has gym issues.
Mm-hmm.
So I talked to a former student who's now a band director. Her school has 2 gyms and she barely gets any gym time. It's crazy.
But
And
go ahead. I'm sorry.
I've talked to some other instructors from the circuit who have really good programs. We're like, yeah, we don't get gym time. We have alternating schedules for our rehearsal schedule so we can get gym time. He's like, and even sometimes that doesn't even work. So
But I would tell them to for the clients that I write for winter percussion for their visual designs. They say, well, we're practicing in the cafeteria. And I said, fine. All you got to do is tell me where the posts are in the cafeteria.
Mhm.
And I will make sure that I build the posts into the drill so that they aren't an obstacle to the drill and they can march in the cafeteria they want. So I know 2 open guards, 2 open drum lines, apologize, that practice in the cafeteria 90% of the time. And they've been WGI finalists for the past 10 years consistently.
Mhm.
So, the gym's one thing, but, very few people want to use the cafeteria after school hours. So if you
Right.
got the right size cafeteria, which Westbrook has a perfect size for 50 by 70 size floor, you can go in there and you can knock it off.
Yep. Yeah, and we've used the cafeteria a bunch. In some of the years that I taught, we've lucked out. The last couple of years I was there, and we got to go to there's basically a school across the parking lot. So we'd use that gym, which it was just big enough to fit the floor in the front ensemble, and that was really about it.
It wasn't ideal, but it was the best solution at the time.
It was the best solution. So,
Mhm.
but we got gym time that way, and it worked out.
Yeah.
So
Do what you
as
gotta
much as
do.
I'd love to be in the big high school gym and actually be able to get up top, that wasn't always an option. So
Okay, so let's start talking a little bit about some of the things you do to rehearse groups, and we could get down a rabbit hole and talk for 10 hours about this. But I first of all, one point, you're going to teach them differently if it's preseason versus mid-season versus the end of the season. Obviously, there's different issues every time of the season, and as a teacher, okay, if we have a week left, I can't get to everything, so I'm going to try to prioritize what I can get to. So I guess I'm going to ask it this way. You're hired, Tom, would you come in and listen to our drum line and then spend an hour teaching us, right?
Mhm.
Like for the average drum line that you hear that you think, could use some instruction, what are the things that you typically would go in to do with that drum line to fix their problems?
I mean, again, like if you get there and there's obvious technique issues, that needs to be addressed. If there's a week left in the season, you're probably not fixing those technique issues.
Mhm.
So you're probably gonna try to get the big moments of the show to really come together and be a big moment. But early season, definitely taking care of any technique stuff that needs to be taken care of.
Using the metronome.
We used Met all the time. Probably right up to the last week of the season, we'd be using
Mhm.
Met.
Mhm.
So yeah, technique stuff. And then I always would shoot, especially early, when the show was 100% taught. we would always just pick after those big moments, and anything leading up to that big moment to make sure it happens.
Mhm.
Because I felt like that was always important for for the GE factor.
So you always had a bag of tricks. Like if they're ready for it, I can always add this or this
Right.
near the end.
Yeah. Yep.
Do you
just-
find that because of the marching technique used by a drumline differing from what we teach the horns and what we teach the guard, that enters into be a challenge for the younger players while they're learning their technique at the same time?
We would spend a lot of time working that technique early season. So I never really saw it to be too much of an issue to put them both together.
But
Because
you
we
worked
did.
it, right?
What's that?
You would work it consistently to build
Oh
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So to start every rehearsal, we would do like our warm up packet, and we would do a visual warm up before every rehearsal, just so we could really reiterate the technique and make sure we're doing the technique the proper way. So we worked it a lot, and usually by the end of the season, it wasn't technique wasn't an issue for us.
Something I'm going to jump on that I know you were part of. 2 points I want to make. One, if I could plead to every band director to start rehearsal on time. Like don't start 10 minutes late, because you got 40 rehearsals. That's 400 minutes you just gave up in rehearsal. So be ready, start on time. I would also say end on time to respect the parents and the kids in their time, and all that. And secondly, a lot of band directors are shy in like stepping over to their drum line and teaching them. Because I've been there. My message to band directors would be, it's just music. It might be different techniques. It might be different all this. And you might not know everything they have to do, but it's music. If you can teach band, you can teach drumline, at least some of it. You might not be comfortable doing everything, but don't be afraid to walk over there and say, hey, it's too loud, or hey, it's dragging, or the things that happen. It's not like I don't play drums, I can't teach the drum line. Like anybody, It's like a rhythm section in jazz band. Anybody can learn the things to watch for and to make it better. For example, one of my go-tos is, hey, it's dragging. You're probably playing with too high of a stick height, and the minute they fix that, it things like that. So those are like band director thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
All right. What if people want to write their own cadence? Like, where do they start? Whether they're drumline teachers or just band directors, like, how would you have somebody start writing a cadence?
Find a song that you like that's 120 beats a minute and write your cadence to it.
Okay.
That's the best. Like, and I feel like the writing a cadence has always been my weakness. So anytime I wrote one, it was usually like short and sweet. Like, we're going to have an intro. We're going to have a groove section.
Yeah.
We're going to have some roll phrase, and then a tag ending, and then we're going to repeat it.
Yep.
So that was always my process.
Because you always like to write to a pre-existing horn show, right? When you
Yes.
feel like that's sort of better
Yep.
for you. So when you have to write with a blank slate, that's hard.
Yeah. So find a cool song that you like. Know a lot of people, like, this might be kind of old school, writing to Tower of Power, writing cadences Tower of Power.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure Andy Carpenter has done it a couple times, and probably every other old school drumline person in the history.
Also go online and how many band directors or how many drum lines put their stuff out there? Like, here's our cadence.
Yeah.
Like, just search free cadences.
Yep.
Check them out, because if they're out there, right, go ahead and use them. And
Yep.
Absolutely.
I personally am somebody who loves a cadence because I think it unifies the band. I think it's something where the kids, like, first of all, the drumline kids, they're not going to play 8 on a hand from the school to the lot and back. Well, they might, but this gives them something that's kind of theirs, and we can oftentimes we put it on them. Like, this needs to get better. You guys can rehearse this without me, kind of thing. And it also, the rest of the kids in the band and the guard really dig here and there. It's like their theme song almost, and they love that music very much. So
I had a 2-year cycle where we'd use the same cadence for 2 years, then next 2 years a new cadence, then next 2 years another cadence, so that the newbies that were like just learning to play. But when they got to the second year, they really could play it and really hang with it and have a good time with it.
Yep.
And sometimes you can take that cadence and use it as a parade cadence, but you can also use it as a fall cadence. You know, you can reuse it a little bit. And if you want to change it, obviously change it.
Right. Had a student one year who wanted to write the cadence, and I was like, "Yep, you can write the cadence, absolutely." I go, write it. We'll listen to it, and then we'll see. He wrote it off the Nintendo Wii theme. There's like there was a older Nintendo system called the Nintendo Wii, and we turn it on. There was like a theme that played in the background, and he wrote the cadence to that. And I was like, "Yeah, this is cool. We're gonna use it."
Right on.
Cool.
All right. So we haven't talked much about the difference in approach between winter and fall. You know, I think are all in agreement that the winter sort of functions as a bridge between falls, if you would. I know a lot of programs get to an issue where winter becomes more important than fall, but I know, Jeff, this is a soapbox for you. You feel strongly that if there's no fall, then there ends up being no winter, right? So it really needs to be something that supports the overall general program.
Mm-hmm.
And you talked about head differences and planning for a gym and versus outside and things like that. Anything else you think of when you're thinking about the differences?
I mean, I kind of keep the approach pretty much the same as I'll spend the earlier season rehearsals working on that technique stuff, and this is the warm up book, and then once we got the warm ups done or as done as we could, we would get because at some point you have to start teaching the show music.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, early on is all technique and warm ups, and then we get to learn some show music. We would try to do a couple of camp weekends where we were just it was pretty much just a Saturday, and we'd spend pretty much the whole day working on drill. So which I found out helped out a lot, because in the winter you don't have a 2-week band camp.
Yeah.
You get whatever time you can get.
Mm-hmm.
So we would take some Saturdays and we'd have, we're going to do 8 hours a Saturday and we're going to learn these sets. And then every rehearsal in between your camp days, you're still learning drill. So I feel like the process for learning the winter show takes a lot longer than the fall.
Because you don't have 2 weeks off to just come in and go 8 hours a day.
Yeah. There's no summer break, and it's the other tricky thing about fall or about the winter is kids are missing more. Kids are always sick.
Mm-hmm.
Or, February break, they're like, "Oh, I'm going to Florida." You're like, "Cool. Well, there's a show on Saturday. Hope you're there."
Yeah.
So winter is really tricky to get what you want done and have full attendance. So
it takes proper management and vision of the season and all that to end up in the place where you want to be.
Yeah, I found that when I started taking the approach to rehearsals, where I would plan out every minute of rehearsal, and I would send it to the staff, be like, "This is what we need to do, and this is when we're doing it."
Mm-hmm.
That really helped us out, and I got that because we were doing that for the fall. I was like, I should really do this for the winter. So,
yeah, and doing it, people should do it in concert band and jazz band and everything. Plan ahead of time.
I think it was probably one of the biggest helps ever, because I would usually just go into rehearsal and we would chat a little bit, be like, "Okay, I want to do, you guys got this time to warm up, and I want to do this, and this." So, but then I would start actually writing everything out and sending it to the staff well before we got to rehearsal.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think it helped them out too, because they knew what was expected of them.
Yeah. So as we wrap up, fine gentlemen, any other things we would like to tell young teachers, either band directors or percussion teachers who are starting this venture? What are some nuggets of information we can leave them with? Crickets.
Don't be afraid of percussion if you're not a percussionist.
Yeah. They're just hitting things.
They breathe the same air that everybody else breathes.
Right. Rhythms are rhythms. 1 and 2 and 1 and a 2 and a. It's all horn or drums. It's all it's all the same rhythm.
I'm telling you, what is the intimidating part for band directors is all the rudimental stuff and all the extra stuff that's like drumline related that isn't concert percussion related. You know, there's a lot in there that can be very overwhelming.
So what, and a lot of, you know, the companies will do this too if you were to purchase a show. But I started doing this a lot towards the end of teaching with Westbrook. I would write in, if it wasn't a natural sticking, I would write in exactly what the sticking was on the page on the music. So there was no, you know, there's never any question on what I wanted there. It's like, this is the sticking. And that was that. So, but
that's great. We also try to, I think a lot of times, didn't happen every time, but we try to provide them either a video of their part, of us playing their part, or a backing, or at least like an audio example. So they can go home and hear, you know, because so many times you're seeing these rhythms that they can read, but it takes longer. But as they see the music and they're hearing it too, they get both pieces and it comes together. And then I think they learn music a lot quicker that way.
Well, I think the great thing with like using the notation software was, you know, you could make those tracks. You could get just the snare track and record it and put it on an MP3. Yep. And you could do it at half tempo or whatever. So that really helped out.
And you can go
for
into
them
the
learning parts.
You can go into the mixer and make it so they can hear the rest of the group, but it's not the loudest thing. So they even get to hear what it's like in context.
Yep. So I think now there's so many like cool little tools and tricks to really help the students learn what the part is.
Yeah.
So
well, Tom, I appreciate you being here. Jeff, I know you got to get in the car. Tom, I will, if people reach out to me on growingband.com and contact me and they want to learn more from you, is it all right if I send them your way?
Sure.
Oh man, this has been great.
You do a great job, Tom. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We sincerely appreciate you taking your valuable time and listening to the Growing Band Director podcast. Your students are very lucky to have a band director like you. If you have any suggestions for episode topics or think you have an area of expertise to share on a show with us, please reach out. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to help spread the word, please give us a 5-star review and tell your band director friends to subscribe as well. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, our YouTube channel, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening to The Growing Band Director. See you next week.